When I began studying the patterns of success, truly studying them, not merely admiring them from afar, I discovered something unsettling. Most people, good people, hardworking people, never come close to the life they imagine. And it isn't because they lack talent. It isn't because they lack opportunity. It is because somewhere along the road, they quietly surrender the steering wheel of their own lives. Now, that realization troubled me for years. It still does. Because if there is one truth I've learned about human potential, it is this: failure is rarely dramatic. It doesn't usually arrive with a crash. It arrives quietly, slowly, almost politely, in the form of neglected habits, divided attention, and the subtle belief that tomorrow is an acceptable replacement for today. Let me share with you a short story that reveals this with striking clarity. I once met a man who told me, "Earl, I'm not a failure. I'm just not where I want to be yet." And as he spoke, I realized something important. He was drifting, not sinking, drifting. And drifting, my friend, is the most dangerous state a human being can enter. A ship doesn't need a storm to be destroyed, only the absence of a captain. By the end of this lesson, you will understand why most people fail, not because they choose it, but because they never choose anything with enough clarity, discipline, and focus. You will learn how to avoid the silent traps that millions fall into every day, and how to rise above the noise with the one thing that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary: personal accountability. Because the truth is simple. We become what we think about, but only when we take responsibility for shaping those thoughts. Settle in with me. For the next few minutes, let's explore why so many fall short of their potential, and how you can become one of the rare individuals who rise above the crowd, commanding your own life with intention, discipline, and unwavering focus. When I was a young man in the radio business, I met two colleagues who started their careers at the exact same time. They were similar in talent, ambition, and opportunity. In fact, at the beginning, most of us believed the second man, let's call him James, would go further. He was charismatic, sharp, full of ideas. The other, Robert, was quieter, more methodical, often overlooked. But life has a way of revealing truths that aren't obvious at the start. Within a few years, James, the bright and promising one, began to stall. He would arrive late, saying he worked better under pressure. He jumped from project to project, always excited, never consistent. Every missed deadline had a story, and every story had a villain. Traffic, management, the industry, the timing, his mood that day. He never saw the pattern forming beneath his feet. On the other hand, Robert, the quiet, disciplined one, moved steadily forward. He showed up early, stayed prepared, and focused on one task at a time. He didn't have the flair of James, but he possessed something far more valuable: the ability to do what needed to be done, even when he didn't feel like doing it. One day, years later, I asked Robert how he'd managed to rise so quickly. He smiled, almost embarrassed, and said, "Earl, I just made it a rule to never lie to myself. If something was my responsibility, I did it. If I failed, it was on me. And if I succeeded, that was on me too." That single line stayed with me the rest of my life. Never lie to yourself, because self-deception is the first step toward quiet failure. Let me give you another example, this time from modern life. Imagine a young professional today. She has a smartphone buzzing every few minutes, social media offering endless distraction, and a workload that constantly shifts. She tells herself she's busy, that she's doing her best. But deep down, she knows she's avoiding the hardest tasks, the ones that demand focus and discipline. She hides behind the illusion of productivity while drifting further from her goals. Why? Because she has never claimed ownership. She has never said, "This is my life, my responsibility, my results." In my years of observing people, I found that failure often begins with tiny, unnoticeable compromises. The student who says, "I'll study tomorrow." The entrepreneur who tells himself, "I'll be serious when things calm down." The employee who believes, "No one notices if I slack just a little, but life always notices. Success always notices, and failure especially, keeps a precise record of every moment we slip." You see, most people don't fail because they lack answers. They fail because they refuse to confront the real questions. Questions like, what am I avoiding? Where am I undisciplined? What have I allowed to distract me from my purpose? Robert answered those questions. James avoided them. And over time, their lives grew miles apart. Now, I share these stories for one reason, to show you that failure is rarely the result of one catastrophic mistake. It is the slow erosion of discipline, the gradual fading of focus, and the quiet abandonment of personal responsibility. But here's the good news, and this is the turning point, because just as failure comes from drifting, success comes from steering, from taking hold of the wheel with clarity, intention, and unwavering accountability. And that, my friend, is where our next section begins. Now that we've uncovered the subtle ways people drift into failure, let's turn to the heart of the matter, the principles that keep us on course, the ideas that separate those who rise from those who fade quietly into dissatisfaction. Over the years, I discovered that the difference between failure and success can often be traced to three qualities: discipline, focus, and personal accountability. They are simple words, but do not mistake their simplicity for ease. These are the pillars upon which every meaningful life is built. Let me begin with discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. It is the quiet power that shapes a person's future long before the world notices their achievements. Most people fail because they live by their feelings. Successful people succeed because they live by their commitments. You've heard me say before, we are guided not by the winds of circumstance, but by the rudder of our own discipline. And it remains true today. When you take charge of your habits, you take charge of your destiny, because every day is a vote cast by your actions for the person you wish to become. Next is focus. In an age overflowing with distractions, focus has become one of the rarest human qualities. But it is also one of the most valuable. Focus is the ability to keep your mind on one significant aim without allowing 1,000 smaller concerns to pull you off course. It is the refusal to scatter your energy across trivial pursuits. I've often said, a person who chases too many rabbits catches none. And today, the average person is chasing dozens, notifications, entertainment, endless streams of information. The mind becomes fragmented, the day becomes chaotic, and the life becomes unfocused. Failure is not an explosion, it is a diffusion of attention. Finally, there is personal accountability. If I could give one gift to every person listening, it would be this: the realization that you are responsible for your life, fully and completely. Not partly, not conveniently, not only when things are going well, completely. This realization is both liberating and demanding. It removes excuses, but it also removes limits. It means that your future is not determined by the economy, by your upbringing, or by other people's decisions. It is determined by what you do with the opportunities and challenges before you. One of the most powerful truths I've ever spoken is this: your rewards in life will always match the responsibility you are willing to take. If you take little responsibility, you receive little reward. If you take full responsibility, you open the door to unlimited growth. And here lies the great secret: most people fail not because life is unfair, but because they never claim ownership. They wait, they hope, they blame, they avoid, they postpone. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, failure becomes a habit, a destination reached through thousands of small, unconscious steps. But you, listening right now, have a choice that millions never make. You can decide, you can take control. You can steer your life with discipline, direct it with focus, and fuel it with personal accountability. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You move from drifting to directing, from reacting to creating, from wishing to achieving. Now, let's bring these timeless principles into the modern world, into your work, your relationships, your goals, and your daily decisions, so you can begin applying them not next week, not tomorrow, but today. Now, let's bring these principles, discipline, focus, and personal accountability into the world you live in today, because a lesson, no matter how timeless, only becomes powerful when it is practiced in the environment you face right now. Modern life has given us incredible tools, but it has also created unprecedented distractions. To succeed today, you must learn to command your attention the way a pilot commands an aircraft. Deliberately, consistently, and with full awareness that drifting for even a moment can take you miles off course. Take discipline, for example. Today, discipline is not just about waking up early or working hard. It's about managing your digital environment. The average professional checks their phone over 100 times a day. Each moment feels harmless. But those tiny interruptions splinter the mind, weaken momentum, and scatter your power. Imagine a young software engineer I recently heard about. Bright, capable, full of potential. But every time he sat down to work, he had 3 monitors open, messages pinging, social media humming, and tabs scattered like an unfinished puzzle. He told himself he was multitasking, that this was how everyone worked now. But his progress stalled, his stress rose, and his confidence eroded. Then one day he made a small decision, to work for just 1 hour, 1 single hour, without distraction, no messages, no notifications, no background noise, just focus. At the end of that hour, he told a friend, "I accomplished more in that one focused hour than I've done in the last 3 days." That moment changed his career, because he realized that discipline in the digital age is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters without interruption. Now consider focus. Most people today are not tired from working too hard. They're exhausted from trying to think about too many things at once. They aren't overwhelmed by responsibilities. They're overwhelmed by distractions disguised as responsibilities. Think of the modern entrepreneur building a business from home. She has emails pulling her one way, family pulling her another, online competitors whispering insecurity into her mind, and the endless noise of comparison from social media. She feels busy, but she is unfocused. She feels active, but she is not advancing. But when she learns to say, for the next 2 hours, I will focus on one essential task, she begins to reclaim her power. Focus becomes her shield against overwhelm, and her results begin to compound. Finally, let's look at personal accountability in today's world. We live in a time where blame is easy, excuses are abundant, and responsibility can be difficult to accept. When a project fails, someone blames the team. When a goal is missed, someone blames circumstances. When life does not unfold as expected, someone blames the world. And yet, those who rise today, those who build extraordinary careers and fulfilling lives are the ones who quietly, confidently say, "This is on me. And because it is on me, I can change it." A modern professional told me recently that he spent years waiting for the perfect opportunity. But once he accepted full accountability for his growth, he discovered something remarkable: opportunities had been around him all along. He simply couldn't see them until he took ownership of his decisions. You see, in today's fast, moving world, personal accountability is not just a virtue, it is a competitive advantage. When you take full responsibility for your results, you separate yourself from 90% of people who are still waiting for conditions to improve. In a world overflowing with distraction, discipline is rare. In a world drowning in noise, focus is priceless. In a world quick to blame, responsibility is powerful. And when you combine all three, you create a life that moves forward with intention, clarity, and unstoppable momentum. Now, let's bring everything together. Because the final piece of this message is a reflection that can change the entire direction of your life from this moment forward. As we come to the close of this lesson, I want you to pause with me just for a moment and consider something quietly, honestly, and without distraction. Where in your life are you drifting? Not failing drifting. Not collapsing, simply moving without direction. Because the truth I've discovered, after a lifetime of observing human behavior, is this: most people don't live the lives they want because they never make the deliberate choice to. They hope, they wish, they plan loosely, but they never take hold of the wheel with firm, consistent hands. You, however, you have a moment right now to choose clarity over confusion, direction over drifting, intention over habit. You can step away from the quiet patterns that lead most people into mediocrity and step into the habits that lead the few toward excellence. Remember this: success is not something you chase, it is something you attract by the person you become. If you become more disciplined, success will find you. If you become more focused, opportunities will reveal themselves. If you become more accountable, your confidence and your results will multiply. These principles never fail because they are rooted in the deepest truth of human potential. You are the architect of your destiny. You decide where your attention goes. You decide what habits you keep, and you decide moment by moment whether you rise or drift. Before we end, let me leave you with a thought I have carried for decades. Your future is always created in the present. The life you will live tomorrow begins with the choices you make today. So ask yourself, what choice will I make today? What discipline will I strengthen? What distraction will I release? What responsibility will I finally claim as mine? if you take just one small step, one act of focus, one moment of discipline, one acceptance of responsibility. You will feel the shift immediately, and that shift, repeated daily, becomes momentum, and momentum, carried long enough, becomes destiny. You have everything you need to avoid the path most people follow. You have the clarity, you have the understanding. Now, all that remains is action. Take the next step with intention. Steer your life deliberately, and let today mark the beginning of a new direction, one shaped not by drifting, but by purpose, discipline, and unwavering personal accountability. I'll be here, guiding you through every lesson ahead, but the next move belongs to you.